Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
This is the Slow Poisoner. I come to you from the future with these words of warning.
It's a hot horror planet. 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 Living in science fiction. Past the point of no returning. We got high on gasoline. And we blew the scene.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 80. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. Attention comic book fans, Lee's Comics of Mountain View, California has closed. But here's the good news. Lee's Comics eBay store is still going strong with over 10,000 vintage comics, the majority of which are now on sale, for half off. Choose from Lee's huge stock of golden, silver, bronze, and modern age comics, and specializing in Silver Age Marvel titles. You can count on friendly service, accurate grading, and quick, secure shipping backed by a money-back guarantee. To check out Lee's eBay store, go to eBay. Click Advanced Search to the left of the search bar, scroll down to Sellers, and enter Lee's Comics Inc., period. That's LeeScomics period. Don't forget the period. Lee's Comics is shipping daily with no delays. New items daily. Mention the Fun Ideas Podcast and get a free bonus gift.
Long title, Looking for the Good Times, Examining the Monkey Song One by One, by Michael A. Ventrella and Mark Arnold. A book that examines each song, gives lots of details about each song and our own personal opinions. You can find this book on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and anywhere where good books are being sold. Our webpage is wordpress.monkeys.com, where you can see many of the songs and give your own opinions of them. And we will be discussing this more on Zilch.
I wish to say here that episode number 72 was to be the final episode of the second season, and then I was going to go into reruns until September. This pandemic changed things, and I decided to do an extra 8 episodes before I took a well-needed break. I will be back to continue with this third season with new episodes in the fall. But you never know, I might do an episode or two during the summer. In the meantime, I hope you get a chance to listen and re-listen to all 80 episodes, even the episodes that may not have attracted your attention in the first place. I am hoping that there is something of value in every show. Our guest today is an artist who has worked for Sick, Cracked, National Lampoon, Donruss, the Muppets, and Tim Allen. Here he is, B.K. Taylor. All right, on the phone today, I have B.K. Taylor. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, considering we're still kind of in this pandemic phase and everything like that. But,
I know we're acting strangely.
Yes. So I've always admired your work, and you've done a zillion things. I mean, I hope we can touch on everyone. Of course, I picked up your artwork originally from, like, Bananas magazine and things like that, which we'll talk about. But tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became a cartoonist.
Well, my dad was a commercial artist, and I would go into his studio, and it was kind of a cozy thing when I was a kid to, lay on the floor or whatever and draw while he was doing an illustration, and he would point out, this is wrong, or look at composition and so forth. So it was an environment that just, set me in the right direction, more or less. But my dad really didn't want me to be a cartoonist.
Oh, wow.
He said, "Oh no, there's no money in that, really." And so I tried not to be that way, but I would go to school, and I remember a teacher catching me. I was doing still flies, and with fruit and so forth, and I would put little fruit flies over and the teacher, of course, commented, and my dad finally gave up and said, "Okay, you want to go for it? Go ahead." And so, luckily, one thing led to another. I was a big fan of Harvey Kurtzman and his, stable of Jack Davis and Will Elder and Wally Wood, Al Jaffe. They were amazing to me, and I love comedy. It's like an addiction, and so basically, when I first started my first year in college, CCS, I went to College for Creative Study, and it was really fortunate that I had a teacher who was in advertising, and he loved comic art, and he really kind of allowed me to explore it, whereas I think other teachers would have probably stifled it a bit, because the cool students were doing, fine art, and to do commercial art or whatever, that was kind of looked down at. But Harry Borgman was the teacher who, excuse me, he just passed away, actually, about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And he became a lifelong friend, and really mentored me through. My freshman year was when I sent cover idea to Sick magazine. Joe Simon and Kirby was the editor, and he got back to me immediately and said, "Yes, okay, do it." And I thought, "Whoa, how did that?" And then I panicked. I really wasn't that experienced in, watercolor and inks and so forth. And what would take me an afternoon today, I labored over for like 3-4 weeks.
Wow.
For this cover, going literally not even an inch a day, just trying to explore, trying to see how these watercolors flowed and color combinations and so forth. And with this, Harry Borgman, my teacher, helping me along the way. So it was really a kick, because the biggest thrill is when somebody actually publishes you.
Right.
Because you grew up and you drew, a horse for your aunt. And she said, "Oh, you're so good." And you took that as like, wow, I can do it. And for somebody to actually say, "Yeah, I'll pay you for that," and publish it was just huge. So that started the relationship with Joe Simon, and that same year, as covers went along, I thought it was Big Daddy Ross that actually recommended me, but now that I look back and put the pieces together, I was approached by a gum company called Donruss.
Oh, yeah.
And they came up with this idea for Odd Rods, which was really a phenomenal series, because I could explore so much, because I had to do so many. I was paid so little You wouldn't believe it. That first series was, but I didn't care. You know,
Right.
that money was not the thing. It was actually doing it. And my classmates, and some would help me sometimes because they thought I was a studio. And that's what they liked to work with, was company studios. So the guy called and said, you know, why don't you become a subchapteress? This is the art director. And it's funny, every time he would call, he was chewing gum. It was, I thought, wow, even he chews that gum. God. You know, it is some of the worst, because I would get boxes of it later when they'd publish, and I'd just chew it out of, because it was there. But whew, you know, after 3 minutes or so, your teeth would start to crumble,
right?
Because it would turn to a rock. But,
of course, nowadays they don't even put gum with the cards. When they put out cards, they just
I think that's a shame. I think having that. The art director told me that after all of the United States would sell as many as they could or whatever, they would bring them back, rebox them, you know, not opening, of course, and they would sell it to Canada.
Oh, wow.
And then I heard when Canada was done, they would rebox them and they would sell them to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And I said, those poor little Mexican kids. That gum must have been like a heat shield on a space shuttle. I mean, anyway. So, yeah, it was quite an experience. And I worked for them for some time.
Right.
We did how many series? I don't know.
Well, let me back up a little bit. So I have a couple of questions based on everything you said. You said you started off at 6, so that was your first published work? Professionally, I guess. And you mentioned MAD, so I mean, the people that worked at MAD, did you try to apply for MAD, or were you intimidated by it? Or?
Yes, I felt I just wasn't ready. It was like, you know, the rookie on the sidelines.
Right.
You're not ready, kid. And so
I didn't know if you tried and then they said no, or if you just took it upon yourself. I better start with one of these second-rate ones first, and then work my way up. And
I had been like rejected when I was like 16 or so, or whatever. I was madly in love with this girl, and I remember actually having a serious conversation with my buddy and saying, yeah, you know, I really, I think I want to marry her, and I think I'll go to New York and I'll do cartoons for Playboy. And, you know, just get one of those penthouses to live in for a while.
Right.
Well, I didn't even know what a penthouse was.
So you dreamed big.
I dreamed really big and got rejected so quick my eyes crossed. Yeah, it's funny. You know, when you're that age, everything, well, yeah, I could.
Yeah.
And you give it a try. So.
Right. Now, do you remember, I should have looked it up, but what the cover was, the first one? The one I can think of is the Trick or Treat cover where there's all the monsters at the door, but that I don't think that was your first one.
No, that was the surfing.
The surfing one, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That one. I mean, you look at it today and you go, I couldn't have taken him 3 weeks. Come on, should have been.
Well, that's what I was thinking elaborately, but yeah, I guess you took your time, so okay.
Yeah, I mean, the monster one you're referring to, that you could say, okay, well, that took a little more.
Yeah.
But each step was a learning process, and the gum cards really, I experimented with colored board and markers and everything. And like I say, my idols were Harvey Kurtzman's group. I was just looking at his book out of Fantagraphics, the biography, The Mad Genius genius, I think the title is, and
Yeah.
he was a mad genius. Oh man, he was good.
Did you ever meet him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was on a panel with him, and I mean, it was just fantastic, just talking with him. He gave me some advice. He told me that the Lampoon should have given me 2 pages rather than 1. He said, you were trying to do too many panels in 1 page. You should have had 2. And I just took that as a great, great compliment. He was just an amazing man.
Yes, yeah. I never met him, but I always admired him. The closest I could say is I met Al Feldstein, but he was completely different.
Yeah, probably by the time he met him, he was a cowboy, right?
Yes. And he was retired, and he was like, I don't get all this fan idolation, but okay, But I still like meeting him. It was fun, So.
Oh, it was great, because, I think Larry Siegel, one of the writers, he was just tremendously funny. He came out and said that if Kurtzman had continued Mad Magazine, it would have never made the popularity and become, the institution that it did.
Right.
Because Feldstein was much more a businessman than
Yeah.
Kurtzman. Kurtzman was exploring everything, and he didn't like his own art, which surprises me, because his style was so unique, and when you see the influence and the not storyboards, but the roughs that he did for all the guys, Davis and so forth, he influenced everybody. His stuff was just amazing.
He had incredible layout skills. I mean, unless you're Bernie Krigstein, everybody followed his lead.
Right, yeah, except that one guy.
Because apparently he was the one who didn't like working for such constricting ways. There's probably others, but that's the one I can think of.
No, it's he was just an amazing person, and he created a genre that influenced most everyone. He was an astounding.
Now, how did you get in touch with Joe Simon then in the first place? Did you just look him up, or?
Oh, yeah, it's that naive. Excuse me, coughing all the time. I've been on the phone all day, and my voice is about to give. But I looked up at the address and the little teeny type in the beginning of the magazine, and just sent these roughs in. And like I say, it was such a quick turnaround. And Davis had just left there, and Davis was astounding also. But he tried to make me, become a little junior.
Right.
Davis, and I don't think I was ready, for sure. But I actually went out and visited him, and because I was just so taken with the whole profession, and he was the perfect one to visit. He lived out on Long Island, on the Sound, and his house was beautiful. Water, faced the water, but he had a pool and everything. And I remember walking around his studio, and I said, Mrs. Steinman, how I hear stories about some of the artists that you worked with and so forth that are in one-room flats in New York. How did you? And he, I used to be able to do his voice. He talked like this. Yeah, well, what you've got to do, he would say, is own something.
Yeah.
That is the magic. You can sit and you can work. It's the easier way because everything is fed to you and you just do the artwork. But he said once you own something and you have a copy written, they have to come to you if it catches on.
Right.
And that was great advice. It really, really was, because that makes a difference. He had, piece of all of those things. Of course, Captain America and Black Cat, he always talked about. I wasn't familiar with that one. My art instructor, Harry Borgman, told me that he visited Joe Simon when he was young and went to their New York studio with Simon and Kirby. And he talked about the fact that Joe Simon had told him that they had published like the first issue of Captain America. I guess it was successful, but they still had boxes of the first issue in the studio. And then one day they said, damn, I'm tripping over these boxes. And you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
They all went out in the alley and were picked up. Pristine copies of Captain America #1. That was a great story. And when I was there at his House on the Sound, there were pages and he had file cabinets, and there were pages of Jack Kirby's pencils and so forth. And I was amazed. I just kept looking through it and looking through it. It was an astounding visit. It truly was.
Wow. He must have had two places to live, because, see, I did a book about Harvey Comics, and Simon and Alfred Harvey were good friends, too. And apparently he had, like, a small apartment in Manhattan as well, so... And people visited
what
him
happened
there.
eventually is his wife passed, and excuse me, and he sold the house.
Oh, okay.
And he got an apartment in Manhattan. But when he was in Manhattan, I had gotten married by that time.
Oh, okay.
And my wife and I visited him in the city, and then he said, come on, let's go to dinner. And we said, okay, where should we go? He says, I'm going to give you a New York experience. And I said, okay, that sounds fun. And he said, this is called, now I'm drawing a blank, what do they call those places where they had the sandwiches and things in...
Just a deli, or what?
Not a deli. It's where everything was in a... Automat,
yeah.
Automat.
Yeah.
And he said, this is the last one in New York.
Yeah. We never got those on the West Coast, but I know about them from, like, movies and stuff.
I know. I had never been to one either. But I thought, well, here we go. So
wow.
He got a lot of change and had the New York experience. But he was really a good guy.
And then going back to your Donruss story, then did they find you because you were published in Sick, or was it just coincidence?
Yes,
okay.
Just prior, ironically, to the cover, it was a Sick cover with a hot rod on it, and I had sent my work to Big Daddy Ross. And it came back with a note saying, "Hey, I want to use you. This is good." Ed Ross was really a businessman, above all art and everything else. He was a great designer and letterer and so forth. But the majority of the drawings, in fact, I think 99%, were art artist named Ed Newton. I don't know if most people know him. He never got the credit, that he should have. But he could paint and, do hot rides like nobody. And Ed knew that and let him go to town. There's several videos that Ed Roth made, and you'll see his style and so forth. He did shirts, airbrushed shirts, and like mouse, and that type of thing. But the real illustrations that everybody's familiar with are Ed Newton. And anyway, he would, he used Robert Williams and several artists actually, and he wanted me to send some designs, and I was ready to, and then Donruss called out of the clear blue and said, would you like to do 66 of these things for next to nothing?
Yeah. How big did you draw those? Were they like?
Everybody thinks they're quite large. But
yeah, I was just curious.
They were 3 by 5, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very small. I have some of the. Eventually, there became a series called Awesome All Stars.
Yeah, I remember those. That's the one I remember first. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a box of those, the originals.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things I got before they were sold to General Mills. And you can take a look at those and see how small and the experimentation that was going on. But yeah, that suddenly I was doing those cards. I had a buddy, Ron Beiser, who helped me when they would call and say, well, get your boys to work. I'd look around, the boys, and I would turn those things out. We just pounded those things out, and it was therapy in a way, because you can just let your mind go berserk. And I tried to keep them a little less gruesome than some of the cartoonists, like some of Ed Newton stuff, as wonderful as he is. They were not likable particularly, and I always tried to make them. I mean, they were ugly. I'm not saying that, but tried to tone it down just a little bit, because it's funny how you can do like if you had a series of artists and they all did monsters, you'd have some guys who they could be phenomenal, but if the creature is too ugly, too gook, there's not a charisma there.
Right.
And it's funny. It's a fine line, but there is a line.
When I was doing the interviews for the Crack Book, interviewed with a bunch of different people, and one is Mort Todd. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was an editor in the 80s, but he was dealing with John Severin, and he asked Severin, how come you never did the horror stuff over at EC? And he drew some examples, and the problem is the way Severin drew is very realistic, and as a consequence, kind of disgusting. And whereas like Davis was kind of more like your style, a little humor in it, so you're not like...
there was something about Davis, even though some of them were just really... I mean, there were occasions, like some of those covers from Tales from the Crypt,
right?
The monster, like that one coming out of a clamshell, I remember that, was like the ugliest damn monster around. But there was something about Davis's style, like you say, that made it acceptable. You know, he was ashamed of some of the things. I remember him apologizing for doing the famous baseball game.
Oh, yeah.
And they're throwing throwing a head around or something.
Yeah, they're throwing a head around. There's
Severed head.
intestines on the baseline.
Right.
Pretty disgusting.
Right. There was just something about his work where you accepted it. You know, I can see what Severin's talking about. 'Cause, you know, if he drew it, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
It would not have been the same. It would have been.
Now, since we're mentioning Cracked, how did that come along? Because you're already doing Sick, or did Sick kind of end and Cracked came along, or did it overlap? How did that work?
Yeah, it did sort of end. I'm trying to think of the transition, but I think Joe started playing around with titles. He tried to make it a little more hip, and sometimes when you're older than the generation you're trying to appeal to, you do it wrong, you know. And he had it with from Sick. It went to spoof, I think.
Well, it was still Sick, but yeah, he put the word spoof on the cover a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he was trying to transition.
And I know he got you to do a lot of hippie artwork later on.
Yeah, he helped send me out to California to photograph the hippie movement.
It is funny, you know, like you know, I mentioned Harvey Comics. They would like, and even Archie or things. They always tried to be quote unquote hip just by adding hippies, but they always seem to get it wrong. You know, it's like you know.
They were the cleanest hippies in the world.
Right.
You know, the Betty and Veronica were so neat, but they had a band around their head.
Exactly. Yeah.
And some fringe, and that made them hippies, I guess. Unfortunately, the hippies were kind of a failed event anyway.
Right.
And you get some like, what was his name? Rubin. Jerry Rubin.
Jerry Rubin, yeah.
who suddenly quit the whole movement and became a stockbroker or something.
Yeah.
Talk about, wow.
Yeah.
About turning around. Woo. So yeah, that was part of it. And then I think I went over to Cracked because I admired John Severin also. Thought he was good with comedy. I thought.
And I know the last time we spoke, I think, like, you have the original artwork that Severin did for Cracked 105, which is the monster movie where all the monsters are slithering out of the theater or whatever, and you wrote that gag, is that correct? Yeah.
I did, yeah. That was my first kind of writing type thing. I mean, it really wasn't much writing. It was an idea, but that's when I started thinking, because then later I wrote for Cracked. Very primitive, but something on First Aid. I did an article on that. And, a few others, and they were always asking me for cover ideas and so forth. And they had the nicest situation. They were down in Florida because I think the publisher, Robert, is it Sproul?
Sproul, yeah.
That's right. Had a health condition, and the doctor said, you know, why don't you take it a little more easy? So they had a place, they had a office right on the water.
Yeah.
And just had everybody send their work in, and it's phenomenal, you know.
Did you ever go down there, or did you just mail stuff in?
Yeah, I did. I actually did. I went down there with some buddies, and we visited later with my wife. So it just, you know, there were some of the things I did in that era where it just, it's embarrassing. It was, like I say, it was a learning curve, but there were some bad curves too that didn't work out as well as I'd liked. But whatever, it is all part of it. Later, I think I found myself much more, you know.
You made the rounds. I mean, then I think next would be Lampoon, right? National Lampoon. That would be after Cracked, or?
Yeah. Well, actually, before that was the Muppets.
Oh, okay. I mean, you mentioned the Muppets when we were emailing. What did you do for the Muppets?
I did a lot of creatures. I went to. I was in New York. I don't know exactly. It might have been Cracked. While I was there, but I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I was doing, on the side, I was helping out on a kids show, a local kids show on the ABC affiliate. And I did a puppet, what was on the show. And the guy who created it, Bob Elnicky, these puppets, he went to New York and met Jim Henson. And he was going to do some things with them, and then he decided not to. And I said, oh, God, I would love to meet Jim Henson. And he said, well, I can put you in touch with him. And I said, ooh, great. And so I called and kind of made a appointment using him as reference. And then I started to work on drawings of Big Bird and, the whole Sesame Street gang and so forth, and put those together, and they looked pretty good, when I was done. Then the day finally came, got on the plane, went to New York, and I was in this funky little hotel that didn't have much money, and I put all the drawings out on the bed, and I looked at them, and suddenly they looked like garbage. Oh. I said, oh, God, that's the worst Big Bird ever. And I said, I can't show him this. I told him that I was going to bring in samples of it. He's going to tell me to get out of there. So it was raining, by the way, and I was totally unprepared. I just had a hat, like a floppy hat, and a Levi jacket and so forth. And I called over to the Muppet workshop, creature house or whatever they called it, and he answered. And I said, oh, hi. Of course, my voice went like up 3 octaves. And, hi, Mr. Henson. It really is late. The plane got in late, and I wonder, maybe we should do this another time, because I would hate to hold you up. And he said, oh, no, don't, don't worry. He said, I'm building a little playhouse for my daughter. And I said, little dollhouse, I guess. And I said, oh. And he said, so come ahead. And So here I go, out into the street, no raincoat, no umbrella. Can't find a cab in New York, when it's really raining. Yeah. And so I stood there for the longest time. Finally got a cab and went there. I buzzed the door, and he came on the speaker and said, come on up. And I climbed up the stairs. You got to remember, I'd been out in the rain a long time. Rain is dripping off this hat. I'm standing there with my portfolio, and he's on the phone, and he kind of turned and saw me, and he actually stuttered a bit. It's like, who in the hell is this guy?
Wow.
And he brought me in, hung up the phone and so forth, and he said, oh, wow. He said, sorry for the weather and blah, blah, blah. And he said, so let me see what you got. And I didn't want to show them, but I put them out. I actually have a photograph of him holding one of them. And he said, okay. He said, yeah. there's possibilities here. He said, Jack Davis has done some things for us lately, and he said he just couldn't get the characters right. And I was like, what? Jack Davis?
Well, they used him a lot, even though supposedly,
Yeah.
in those early days, on Sesame Street and stuff.
If you look at, Big Bird and so forth, I don't think Davis took the time to really study how Big Bird is drawn, and how he should be drawn. It was just Davis being as crazy as he was.
Yeah.
And so he said, but if you could fill it out here, and if you could do this, and you could do that. He said, they say that, they told me that you do puppets and so forth. I said, yeah, I can do voices and puppets and that type of thing. And he said, really? And God, he took these practice Muppets, kind of foam rubber things. And he said, hold your hands up. He said, there. Now he said, go ahead, make it work. Holy crap.
Wow.
I gotta be funny in front of you. I don't, but I went at it and I made him laugh, and he right then and there really kind of made me an offer to come there and to be an art director and designer and puppeteer. And I actually went to Muppet school with Dave Golez, who did several characters. And Dave and I went at it. But, every day, I was there for like 2 weeks, I think. And every day, I would miss greenery. I'm in Midtown. And I said, do I really want to come here? And I had gotten really serious with my future wife, and I didn't know whether I wanted to get married and then come there and live and so forth, which, I was offered profit sharing.
Wow.
It's one of those things you think back and go, So, but I eventually said, I don't think this is going to work.
Oh.
And he said, no. He said, think about it. And then he had me come in and draw the what they call the style book for the Muppets. Each character was set on a little workbench in front of me, and I would sketch them out as to how they really should look. And this would be used for all the artists doing the books and all the rest of that. And that was really fun, because I'd sit down and go, damn, there's Grover. I love Grover. This is so cool. And the only part with Grover was he's a hard character to recreate and get the same humor that that character has on paper. And I would draw him, and I'd say, oh, that's good. And then Frank Oz would come in, and he'd go, oh, what are you doing? I'm doing character sketches of Grover. And he said, oh, that's great. These are great. These are, oh, wow. I don't know. That nose is... And I go, oh, well, I can change it. And I'd change it, do it. And then he'd leave, and Jim would come in. And he'd go, oh, I like the way you had the nose before.
Oh, okay.
It was like, now what do I do? So eventually I got him in the room at the same time, and we figured everything out. And then brought my wife in there, and Jim couldn't have been nicer. Took us to Connecticut and said, this is where you can be living. You don't have to live in Midtown. But I just wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I guess harking back to Joe Simon. It's like animation. Some of the animators are so incredibly good. And yet, do we really know that they existed? They're part of a huge staff. And some, of course, get the notoriety they deserve, but others just don't. And that's the way I kind of felt about that. I designed Dr. Teeth for them.
Oh, okay.
And some of the band, the Muppet Band. And then later on the NBC Jim Henson Hour, I designed that band also.
Oh, okay. So did you work for the Muppets off and on over time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
they
just
would bring me in.
straight through, okay.
They did a pilot called Inner Tube. And I was a consultant on that. Wow. Great. But when I brought in Dr. Teeth, it was actually called the Boogeyman. Because I liked the New Orleans sound, Dr. John and the Neville Brothers and that type of thing. And so I thought this would be so great. He could throw, that sparkly sauce or the sparkly powder or whatever it is. And I had it where he would have like hula hoops kind of under his robe type thing. So when he walked in or came in, he would like undulate like Joe. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it shows you how naive. I said, Jim, I was thinking of that New Orleans sound. Now Jim was from Mississippi originally, so he knew that Southern roots type thing. And I said, I was thinking that's what his band would be like. I mean, they'd be really New Orleans, down and dirty, and I just thought, I play in a band, and we kind of do that thing, and I could do some cuts for you, and he said, well, I think I'd rather just get in touch with Dr. John. Oh, that's right, you can do that. I forgot. But anyway, that was a great thrill.
I remember seeing that first character, that Dr. Teeth character. I don't remember which talk show it was. It was Mike Douglas' show or Merv Griffin. It was one of those chat shows in the afternoon, and he brought it out. Henson brought it out. He says, here's a new character we created called Dr. Teeth, and I go, wow, and this is before the Muppet Show or anything, so I didn't know what he was going to do with it, and he just had it on there and kind of voiced it and gave it the standard kind of Jim Henson voice, I thought, but,
Well, that is, wow, I wish I'd seen it myself.
Yeah.
The reason why it was called Dr. Teeth is that I drew the character with teeth. and he looked at it and he said, none of the Muppets have teeth.
Right.
And I said, well, I can erase them. And he said, no, I kind of like that. And consequently, that's why they named him Dr. Teeth.
Oh, that's funny.
And Jim came in when I finally got married for our wedding, and I have the honor of saying that was only the second time that he had worn a tie anywhere. The first time was his father's funeral. And he wore a tie to our wedding. We thought that is so cool. But don't ever invite a Jim Henson to your wedding, because nobody pays attention to you.
Right.
Everybody was crowded. They did that little tinkling of the glass thing.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to kiss the bride, and everybody goes, well, they did. My buddy, who was the best man, did the ding, 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 ding. Everybody was around you, and they all kind of looked back. we did our little kiss, but they went right back to Jim. It was funny. I mean, one of those classic moments.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he was great. It was a sad day when he left.
Yeah. Were you working with him even up to the end? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. I was designing.
Okay.
In fact, at one point, he wanted. Because I designed some things that I had drawings. I still have those of a band I created. It was called Bob Beaver's Zoot Suit Band, and he really liked those characters. And he said, "Do you have any other designs or whatever?" And I said, "Well, I've done a zillion kind of creature cards, gum cards, and I had a sample of one or two of them, and I showed them, and he said, 'Oh, wow!' He was a special person, really."
I know two people, and one of them's been on the podcast, and one I'm trying to get on the podcast. I don't know if you know them. One's Guy Gilchrist. He's drawn for the Muppets and did Nancy and Sluggo for a while. I don't know if you knew him.
I'm familiar with the name.
Okay, and then the other is Craig Yo, and he's a publisher nowadays for the most part.
Oh yeah, I knew Craig Yo. At the very end, I was doing a book for them.
Okay.
And they told me that I could have this little room to do something, and there was a stationery, and it said Craig Yo.
Oh, okay. Right.
And I said, "Oh my God." I'd seen him at Comic Cons and things.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, he was in New York, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of crossed paths. I've crossed paths with him on several projects.
That's cool.
Seems like. So, yeah, he apparently did quite a bit for them.
Right. Now, going back to your magazine work, okay, so I started talking about Lampoon. How did you get involved with that? I mean, that seems kind of, in a certain way, kind of left field, because it seemed like you're kind of like a clean cartoonist, as it were, And I'm not saying that the stuff, the Appletons or the Timberland Tales are really that filthy dirty. They really weren't compared to stuff other people did. But, how did you get in there, and how did you get along with everyone? Or did you just kind of mail it in on that one, too?
When I was I was a fan of the Lampoon.
Oh, okay.
Because Lampoon was kind of it was the big boy Mad magazine.
Right.
I mean, there you had sexual innuendo and so forth, and you'd never seen that.
Right.
I mean, you'd seen it, of course, but not as well done as they did it. And Doug Kenny and Henry Beard and some of the staff there were incredible. And so I was a faithful reader, and eventually I started coming up with strip ideas in my head. And if you're going to do a strip, you better love the characters. And it took me a long time to really develop characters that I liked. Weird as they are, when I look at the art now, and I see that Maurice, the little Indian boy,
right,
is like another style. And he's running around. Nobody's noticing that he's got the weirdest little eyes and so forth. But it all seemed to make sense,
Well, I kind of thought you were doing like maybe unintentional, an homage to like Black Hawk, where Chop Chop looked totally different than all the other characters.
Yeah. It's ironic. I really wasn't doing that, but it came out that way. Yeah. And like, I started out with the Appletons, and I was watching, some of these reruns, and they were so cute and sweet and everything else. And I thought, what if the guy's just a maniac? Rogers and Ward Cleaver and, Mr. Brady. And so I thought I was being clever, and I put the word apple, like for All-American Apple Pie, and then I put ton on it. I thought that was kind of an original name. Later I found out it was a pretty common name. But I did the ones, I think I had 2 samples, and I said, I'm going to drop in there and see if I can wiggle, in somehow. And I had tested it and got some laughter, because what it was shock. And that was me learning my way. I started out with the Appletons being shocked.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. And you would get the laugh through that. Later, like when Grandma Appleton starts to really come about, the humor starts to really gel.
Yeah.
And they become more funny, I think. So that these first shocking strips, I went in, met the receptionist. She took me in and motioned to Doug Kenny, the creator, co-creator of the Lampoon, who to this day he got me with this one. He had a civil defense helmet on, from the war or 50s or whatever, the white civil defense helmet. And he had that on, didn't say anything like, oh, excuse the helmet, or, we're shooting something or whatever. And I didn't want to seem uncool, so I didn't mention it either. And because I thought for sure he's going to at any moment go, oh, and by the way, and he never did. To this day, I don't know why he had it on. I've even asked some of the other editors. I don't even remember it. But he looked at what I had, and he said, that's kind of ironic because we're doing a special, Sunday Comics or something, special. And it's Brian McConaughey and Sean Kelly. And I remember he escorted me to their office, and they were laughing at something. And I came in, I said, oh boy, this is going to be pretty scary. And because I really wanted to get in there. And I showed it to Brian and Sean, and they liked it. They said, oh, this will work perfect for what we're doing. We're doing a satire on funnies, and this would work great. Can you do like a 50s style? And I said, sure. I didn't know what that was at the time. I later just said, oh, yeah, I get it. That kind of all-American style. Things that my dad actually was doing.
Right.
My dad was kind of a model for Appleton, and later I grew into the part of it. But, by the way, Tim always wanted to do a film with as Norm Appleton. Tim Allen, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And anyway, they sent me back with some notes and so forth. Can you make this 50 style? I really was clumsy with the first, as you can see in the book. They were so crude. So I'd look at it and I go, I guess that's 50s. But what they did is they kind of changed my style a little bit. And I thank them for that. Because then it wasn't so Mad Magazine. Yeah. It became more, like Brian said. He said, it's actually funnier if a guy who looks really straight, if he's drawn fairly straight, does the funny stuff, and he's not just all goofy and big-footed. And I think he had a point there. So I started going in that direction, and it was just one thing after another, and then I came up with a Canadian idea, some Canadians on the staff, Sean Kelly being one. And that was, my uncle owned a lodge in Bobcaygeon, Canada, which is up by Toronto. I don't know if you know anything about that area, but it was up there, and it was a historical lodge. Hewn wood from 1830-something or other, and they were kind of resurrecting it and making it happen. And I worked there for my uncle for the summer, and I was a waiter and a stable boy and a lifeguard and you name it. And you know, I'd get tips, and it was heaven. There were waitresses up there, young ones, and it was just. But one day there was this group that came in, and there was this little Indian boy who basically looked like Maurice. Had this round face, and it was wearing like kind of wintry clothes. It was pretty hot. And he was just the neatest little kid, and I got along with him great. But I think that transferred over to Little Maurice, you know. And Constable Tom came about by my dad was Canadian. They came from Britain to Canada, and so my aunt stayed there, and we would visit them, and I thought Mounties were the coolest thing in the world. And you know, I always thought they ran around in the woods with those red uniforms, but I guess they didn't.
That's what they always show, yeah.
But I told my aunt that one time, and she said, "You really like those, huh?"
Yeah.
And she got me this. I'll have to send you a photograph of it. Got me this Mountie who looked like Constable Tom. He was so disappointing to me because he looked like he had a little brain damage. I mean, his little teeny head and this hat. I said, "Oh God, you know, I've got to use that as a character." And so that's when I was a little kid, by the way. Wasn't later in the Lampoon days. But anyway, yeah, those characters were a hit instantly. This is the most amazing story. I mean, the chances of this happening, I'm not sure a scientist could figure out. One day, I was just driving along, and I saw this hobby shop, and I pulled off the road and said, I wonder what this is all about. It was a new place. And prior to that, I had done a convention, I think, and I had a hoodie, a gray hoodie, made up that I wore, and I'm not even sure I wore it at the convention, but I had it for the convention. And on the back of the hoodie, I had printed the logo with the characters from Timberland Tales. And that day, I happened to be wearing it. I didn't even wear it that much. And I walked into the store, opened the door, and I hear this guy say, I'm literally not 3 feet in the store when I hear him say, "No, you've got to see this cartoon strip, man. It's so funny. This dog has like foam on his mouth, and there's this little kid, and the dog is always like causing and meanwhile, you know how you go into a store when you're really looking at something else and you're pretending you're looking at something.
Yeah.
So I'm like by the counter going, are they talking about Timberland too? This is crazy. And so I interrupted. I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Are you by any chance talking about Timberland Tales from the National Lampoon?" And the guy looked at me like I had just called him a name. You know, he's like backed off, like, "Who are you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, God, wow, that's so bizarre. I'm the guy who does that." And there was like total silence. And I said, "Really? Yeah, no, I'm the guy who does it." And he went, "Oh, that's great." Knowing that he didn't believe a word I was saying.
Wow.
And so I said, "Well, yeah, well, anyway, thanks for the compliment." And I turned around and started walking out of the door. And, of course, he spots the back of my hoodie. And he says, "Oh, my God, I think he is the guy." And I could have turned around, but I said, no, it'd be cooler if I just kept walking.
Wow.
And I got in my car and left. And to this day, I'm sure these guys are still talking about who was that weird guy.
Oh.
But what are the chances?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you said that to me, I'd probably say, "Well, prove it, draw it here."
yeah, right.
You know,
exactly.
It's kind of funny that they just dismissed it out of hand, but hey.
Exactly. So, anyway, that's a very strange story.
Why did you change from calling yourself Bob to BK? Is there a reason for that, or it's just
Yeah.
catchy?
Basically, I was at this what proved it to me that I should change my name a little bit. I was at a party, the Lampoon sent us around to promote the magazine, and I was at a party, I think it was in L.A., and this guy came up to me, he had tags, little name tags, and he said, "Oh, man," he says, "I love your work." And I said, "Oh, thank you. That's great. You know, thank you very much." And he said, "Yeah. When you do those caricatures and so forth, I just love your style." And I'm going, I don't do caricatures particularly. And then he went on about, and he started getting political, and I went, oh. And I said, are you talking about that I'm a political cartoonist or whatever? And he said, "Yeah, you're Bob Taylor from the Dallas whatever the paper is." And I said, "Oh." And right then it's like the most degrading, horrible, because then he's embarrassed,
Right.
and I'm embarrassed. And I said, "Okay, this is not good." And actually, this Bob Taylor, he draws in a way very similar to what I do.
Oh, that's funny.
And then somebody else told me about, because I told the incident to someone, and they said, there's an animator too in L.A. that is named Bob Taylor. And I said, "Oh, well, it's time to think we'll go."
Yeah. Well, I mean, my name is very common, Mark Arnold. It's like, but I never bothered to change it. But and then for you, is like there's an actor named Robert Taylor.
Right, and that's of course what you get whenever you're using your charge card or whatever. Somebody, "Oh, Robert Taylor, the actor."
Yeah.
No, not exactly.
Well, I was wondering just because, we were talking about R.L. Stein, and it's like, did you change yours just to say, you could be R.L., I'll be BK?
I think he copied me. I think that was it. Then it was like there was R.L. Stein, and there was M.K. Brown,
Right.
P.J. O'Rourke, all Lampoon people.
Right.
And, I think it comes from possibly, I'm not sure for them or whatever, but the Harvard Lampoon, everybody just, the staff and so forth, they use their initials.
Yeah.
And it may have started with, I don't know. But there's a lot of us with just initials.
Yeah.
In today's world with so many,
Well, I think it worked for you because now I know it's you.
Yeah, well, it stands out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the guy in Dallas gets, either criticism or
You're
credit.
that Timberland guy.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, that's where that came from.
And then the other thing you wanted to mention is about your dad. You wanted to say a few more things about your dad, so I guess you could mention it here.
Yeah, okay. He was a commercial artist. He did some illustrations, mostly for like the auto industry and so forth, but also he had some men's adventure type illustrations, and he worked for Motown also. He did the Supreme's The Greatest Hits album, and there's portraits in that when you open it up, they're individual portraits of the Supremes. Mm-hmm. He illustrated those, and I think he did some things for the Miracles and several other related type things, advertising and that type of thing. So,
cool.
Yeah, it was kind of a thrilling thing to see that when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay. And just made me wonder, did you ever do any album covers in your career?
Did I? I did. Oh. Yeah, I did a couple. There was nothing, not anyone that really was in the limelight. But thinking back, and yeah, God, I can't remember their names. Oh, and I had my one of my illustrations pilfered for a record company. They just took it, and I think they were possibly black market type things, but somebody showed me the illustration. I couldn't believe it was the label for the company.
Right.
On Instagram, I have this Carmen, I call her, but she's almost an animated type of character dancing, and I mean, she is really grooving, and they just out and out took it.
Well, I think we talked about this before, but I'll mention it again. I know we're continuing on, but didn't you get a little ruffled when they started using a drawing that kind of looked like Norm Appleton, for the Bob Society or something?
Oh, yeah, the Sub-Genius.
Yeah, the Church of the Sub-Genius,
Yeah, that I was shocked by it because I had just seen, I went to an old comic store and found a comic that had this old ad for pipes, and it was that image. And I said, "Oh my God, he looks like Norm." And I said, "Dad, I got to buy this. This is really cool." And I thought I'd use it somewhere down the road, to say, "Oh, look, he's famous" or whatever. But I just kept it, and then all of a sudden I saw this thing come out, and then everybody started associating, and then somebody accused me of ripping them off.
Oh, boy.
Which, that's when I got a little ticked off in that, I was published before he came up with it. But in the Lampoon, in the I Think He's Crazy book, I do say in there that we are not associated, but I think Norm would be very flattered. Norm Appleton would be very flattered to be referred to as God. So, all is well.
Yes.
Onward we go.
All right.
And then at the very end was Uncle Kunta. I don't know if you've seen that.
I think I remember that because I read Lampoon from late 70s all the way to the end. I even have the last issue, which a couple friends of mine who collect such things, they're really jealous, But you were long gone by that point. That was like 1998. I think you made it to like the early 90s or something, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's when I started working for Home Improvement.
Oh, okay.
91.
Okay.
And then I left, and the thing I did at that point, I don't think I did anything for Lampoon. I do have missing. Someone's got it out there, and I wish I could have found it for the book. I saw it offered, or not offered, but shown on one of the online original comic art sites, and it was the last Timberland, which was borrowed, so to speak, when they closed the New York office down, I think, and not returned. And I wanted to get that to include, and I think maybe because I wrote to the site and they never replied, but I said, I'd just like to use, I know he must have bought it from someone, and as far as I'm concerned, it's his, but,
Right.
I would like to include it, because it never was published. And the only ones that have originals are Tim Allen, and one of the editors borrowed one.
Now, you mentioned a few times with Joe Simon and everything, try to own your characters. So do you own these characters?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to get at.
Yeah, it would not have been stupid.
So is that the way you were able to easily?
No, I never. No, thank God.
Yeah.
That was one of the nicest things that Maddie Simmons did was they got first rights, and then you returned to you.
Because all this time we're talking about gum cards, we're talking about Muppets, everything, and it's like, I don't think he's owning any of this stuff,
Right. So far, that had traded advice.
Yeah, so, that's good news. So, getting the rights to do, the book we're talking about is a new book you just put out called I Think He's Crazy, the comics of B.K. Taylor. So getting the rights was not a problem. You own the rights, so it's your own thing, right?
Yes, that's all.
And I assume you worked with Gary Groth over there at Fantagraphics to get the book put.
Yes, Gary Groth was the publisher, and then the editor was Mike Catrone, and the art director was Justin Allen Spencer. They were great to work with. I think he did a really nice job putting the book together. I love the end pieces and so forth. And finally, I get to bring out Uncle Kunta, which a lot of people didn't see because it was towards the end, and it was actually becoming one of my favorites.
There wasn't too many of those, were there? There was like a handful of those, right?
Yeah, there was only 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But I thought they were funny.
Yeah.
Even when I found them again, I was kind of giggling at my own work, which is odd. I just thought it was a great character. I was hoping it wouldn't cause some kind of problem. I'm sure somebody's going to stick me for doing it.
Yeah.
But it was based off of. I think I talk about him in the intro of the book, that A.B. Frost, who was a tremendous illustrator at the turn of the century, and a friend of mine, Randy Deal, who's an artist, sent me this book from New York, and he said, I think you're really going to like this guy. He made me laugh. And I thought, oh boy, that humor sometimes doesn't survive over the years, and I thought, I doubt if I'll follow. He made me laugh. And I think I mentioned that in the intro, like I say, that it was so weird. I sat there thinking about that. I've never met this guy, and 100 years ago he created this, and he's made me laugh today. And I thought, wow, if I could only do that, And he did the illustrations for the original Uncle Remus series.
Okay.
And if you find the book or reproduce versions of it, you'll see how his ink style is very indicative of that.
I'll have to look at that. I do have a copy of Uncle Remus Stories. It's just a red hardback book from I don't know, 80, 90 years ago or something like that. But I haven't looked at the drawings in a while. But, you know.
That may be worth something.
Yeah.
He would, like I say, he was an illustrator, and then he started getting in. He was really like the godfather of sequential art. He started doing that type of thing for publications, you know, way back then. And I've got an original of his, which is really a kick. And on the back, he actually started one and then didn't like it. Apparently, he flipped it and worked on the other side. But that's where that idea came from. But I thought I'd make him kind of a black Appleton and give him kind of this wry sense of humor to these little naive kids, and change everything. You know, God's black, and Robinson Crusoe gets his comeuppance. If you've ever read the original Robinson Crusoe, boy, talk about uncomfortable. Robinson was pretty weird,
Yes.
to say the least. So I had Friday kind of come back at him, and I had visions of other stories. The biblical stories are fun because of the change of cast. And that kind of rounded out that whole era, basically.
Now, there's two questions that are probably going to have detailed answers, so I'll just ask them both, and then you can just... how did you get involved with Home Improvement? That seems like such a left turn, even though you were working with the Muppets. And then you have a backward in this book, the foreword's by Tim Allen, the backward's by R.L. Stein, or Jovial Bob Stein. And I know you did a lot of stuff for him, for Bananas and Dynamite and Scholastic and stuff like that, and Jane Stein, his wife, and things like that. So those are the two things I kind of want to cover before we're done.
Okay.
So go
ahead. You asked for it. We're got another 3 hours. I already lost my voice. First one was basically Tim Allen. We live in the same area, ironically, and he was a big fan of the Appletons and followed it and would bring strips into the comedy club here called the Comedy Castle, Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. And someone finally said, you know, I think he lives around here. And he said, no, he's probably out in New York. And they said, no, I'll see if we can contact him. So they contacted this guy, Bob Elnicky, who knew Tim and I, and they put us together. And we found out we had the same sense of humor, and then take a few, like in those old movies where the calendar comes out and swirls another year or so. He was discovered by Katzenberg and Eisner in the comedy club in L.A., and they offered him an opportunity to have his own show. And they offered him, he was supposed to, they had said, we think it would be great for you to be a policeman, like one of those canine police officers. And he turned it down. And everybody said, you don't turn down Katzenberg and Eisner. And he did. He had the guts. And he apparently brought up the Appletons, and then when they started production and so forth, he'd come back for a party, and he said, would you like to try out for the show? And I said, sure. Now, I was used to writing vignettes. Basically, that's what, my page was for the Appletons. There are a couple in the book anyway. And so I wrote a sample script. I sent it to the producers, and they brought me in. And when you go to do a show, it's like submarine duty. You have to make sure that everybody likes you, and if you're a problem, they don't want you on board, because sometimes you're working till 3 o'clock in the morning, and if you're one of the rabble-rousers, they don't want you there. So they literally sat around me in a circle and just pounded questions at me, and apparently I was able to pass muster and did my first intro into sitcoms. And so here's where it gets dicey, is I was brought into Burbank, and one of the producers introduced me as Tim's friend. And that's like the scarlet letter. Right on your forehead, you're branded as a squealer. And so for the first month or so, I would come in the morning, and I'd see some of the writers talking in the hall or whatever, and everybody would kind of stop and put their heads down. And I'd be like, morning, morning, and whisper to each other during certain, gags or whatever. And I thought, boy, this is going to be a tough road. And I had to kind of prove to them that I wasn't going to go over, because what usually happens is the writers, if a gag dies, the writers blame the actors, and the actors blame the writers. And they'd keep, they would think I'd run to Tim. But finally, it was around Christmas time, and they gave me my first script. Up to that point, you literally are creating shows for a writer. In other words, there's an A and a B and a C story, and there's a bulletin board with note cards that have different ideas. The boys on the show steal money, and then C, the neighbor next door, blah, blah, blah. So in the meantime, that's what I was doing up to that point, is working with the other writers on that. And then it came my turn, and they said, well, we're all going on, vacations over the holiday, and, but if you need anything, just give us a call. And so I went back home, and I celebrated the Christmas, and I started writing like crazy, and I got to areas where I was unsure, and I made calls and didn't get any answers. And I thought, this is getting scary. It's almost time to go back. And so I just wrote. And then I got on a plane, went back to L.A., and handed it in. Oh my God! With my imagination, it was the camping episode was the first one, and they said, "Oh, this is a little cartoony." I had Bigfoot possibly coming at the end. The rest of it pretty much stayed, but it was the Binford Tools camping episode, and we worked on it, rewrote it. The other writers, of course, were looking at me like, what are you doing? This thing is huge. And what eventually happened, I remember I called my wife, and I said, I think this is going to be over very soon, because I had just walked to the sound stage where they were rehearsing, and all the writers were ahead of me, kind of like, like animals do when an animal's dying. they leave them to die. And I remember I remember it was kind of windy, and actually a little piece of sagebrush blew by me. And I thought, oh, God, this is so horrible. And they did some rehearsals and so forth. But it was so big, the script was so big as far as budget, they had to, for the first time, use 2 sound stages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're afraid of the audience losing the energy while walking from one sound stage to the other. And so the punch-up person, this Billy Rebeck, was really working the audience, trying to keep them, escalated. And I just walked over with everyone thinking, oh my God, I'm the one that's caused all this. And then we got to the other stage, and they had like a band going, beep, 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 beep. I was going, oh my God, my nightmare doesn't end. And my wife was there because the night that they used the script that you created, they have you stand up and the audience applauds and all that. And so she was there with me, and we watched the show, and Wilson came out, and he didn't have the fence, so he's out in the woods. They're camping, and he had a scarf around his face, And I heard the audience kind of go, oh, my God. And I was so nervous and kind of excited. I started applauding, laughing and applauding, and everybody followed me. So if you ever see the episode, the first hand applauding is me, out of nervousness.
Wow.
But at any rate, it worked out in the end. Actually, my second script was over budget too. So the bean counters would say hello to me in the beginning of, when I first got there, but after a while they were too crazy. But I made amends with all the writers, and we're friends to this day.
That's cool.
Did 3 seasons there, so.
Do you know how many episodes that you did?
That I did solely were, I think, 6 or 7.
Okay, that's
maybe.
cool. Over a 3-year period? Yeah. So there's like 2 or 3 a year. Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah, it was really an experience because I learned script writing basically, and I'm working on a script right now. And it was a sort of an education, paid education basically, because I had really good producers there and so forth. Matt Williams and Carmen Finestra and David McFadden. Matt Williams created Roseanne.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And worked with Carol Burnett show and so forth. So it was fun, and still stay in touch with Tim and everyone. So
that's cool. Yeah.
good experience.
Yeah, you wrote your foreword, so I guess you did.
Yeah.
That'd be terrible. It's like, did you write a foreword? Who are you?
Yeah, right. Look, I got a book. Take a few minutes.
I know a Bob Taylor. I don't know a Beacon.
Yeah, right. Wow, Bob Taylor. He's in Dallas or something, but I love him. Yeah, that's about it.
All right. Anything else you want to include, or?
But then, if you want to really quick, God, I can't believe we've talked this long.
Yeah. See, you think 60 minutes was a long time. We're already at 90 minutes. It's like...
I know. Remember, I think when you first approached me, you said could be as long as 90. And I said, oh God, I don't know. Anyway, then when I was in 3rd grade.
Oh, jeez.
We were think, if I'm remembering clearly, that era we were talking about, the cracked era,
Yeah.
I think I was still doing some cards. There were Zero Heroes. There were various cards. I did a series with Alex Nino, who's just an amazing artist. I remember talking to him once. He was inking a page for DC, and he looked up at me, and I looked down, and his hand was still going. And I thought, he's looking at me. How the hell's he inking? And he was that good. That's really weird. Anyway, I sent my work into Scholastic I just got married and needed funding for the new house and all that. And so I sent my work into Scholastic, and they sent me over to Bob Stein, or L. Stein.
Yeah.
And I worked for a little magazine. It still publishes it, called Scope.
Yeah.
Did you get that in school?
Yeah, I used to get that in school.
And I did my first illustration for him. And it was a skier or something. He's tumbling at you or something. And Bob really liked. And then we started talking, and we had the same interests.
Yeah.
Harvey Kurtzman, Bob and Ray tapes, things like that. And we became phone friends. And to this day, we still call each other, and then we visit out. He has a place out in the Hamptons that we visit. He has this huge grotto, which is gorgeous, and we go there in the summer. But we went for years as friends. His wife called and said she'd like me to try dynamite and a hot dog, and there was another one in there too. Oh, bananas.
Yeah.
And that was an experimental, fun time too. And I appreciate everything they've done. They were great. Great. He's actually one of the nicest guys in the world.
Yeah.
Not the dark character.
He's not like in Goosebumps or whatever. I don't know if you're aware of this. You might be, because you talked to him. They put out a series of children's books, like who is Walt Disney or who is Stan Lee or something, and he got one. So I bought it, just because it says who is R.L. Stein, and it's his life story in a simplified children's book. But it just came out, and I was like, cool, and it talks about his love for Kurtzman and stuff, and how he started the magazines, and then how he got into Goosebumps, and I think it mentioned Eureka's Castle in there too. It's like,
oh my God!
So
wow, that is so great. I didn't even hear about that. You didn't even talk about it.
Yeah, I think it came out a couple months ago, and I was like, ooh, R.L. Stein, cool, neat. Because I know him still as Jovial Bob Stein, because, that's where he was the editor of Bananas, It's like, that Goosebumps stuff.
That's the Bob Stein that he really likes.
Yeah, because the Goosebumps stuff I was already getting in my 20s, and I go, well, that's kind of cool, little horror stories for kids, but I was a little bit old for it, so, I just was aware of it, because it became a movie and stuff like that, TV series and whatever,
Yeah, well, he just did a couple of articles, from some of the Scholastic magazines, and they caught fire, and he saw that title in TV Guide. It said, this movie will give you goosebumps.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, that's what I want to call it. And yet his heart is in humor. He loves humor. But, you don't say no to one of the all-time best-selling series.
Did you ever work with him on any of those, or no?
I did just kind of he has done some comedic Goosebumps type things, and I did a 365 page, one of those rip-off calendars that were ripped off, but you actually take each page an illustration on each one of those.
Cool.
So I worked with him on those Goosebumps, and I did some other Goosebumps things. I can't.
Yeah.
Some monsters, something. One of their, sort of offshoot type things.
Yeah.
But they're quite a duo. I mean, his wife is an amazing packager.
Yeah.
And I'd say that about mine too, is that, believe it or not, if you ever met my wife, she's like Kathleen of the North, from Timberland Tales. She was the editor, really, because I would go up and come up with an Appleton or a Timberland, and then bring it down to her, and I'd sit across the room pretending I'm not looking at her yet. I was looking out the corner, and I knew right what panel she was on, and I go, what? That wasn't funny? That part wasn't funny? I put her through hell in that, because then there were times she'd go, yeah, that's a good one. And I go, no, it's not a good one. You didn't say that's a good one. Okay, it's not funny. I'll go do another one. She goes, no, it's good enough. And like a 3-year-old, I'd kind of pop my way through it and try and fix it. But she went through just about every one of those, plus correcting grammar mistakes and things like that.
Did she go through like your scripts for Home Improvement and things like that later on, or no?
Yeah, to this day she does. She's an English major.
Oh, okay.
She catches all billion, my thing is, that's why I use like a dictation form.
Oh, okay.
Up until they just change the technology on it, and I can't use it. But I'm going to try and find something that I can, but that's the way I wrote. I'm doing a script that I wrote a long time ago with another writer, and I'm going to revamp it. It's a romantic comedy, kind of an adventure. And I use the dictation because you speak as though the actor would do it. You don't have to sit there and worry about your grammar or anything else. Right. You can go back and fix that. But for script writing, I find it really, really helpful. So that's what I'm doing.
Did you write any other scripts? Like, did you work with Tim Allen again on his later show, Last Man Standing, or anything, or is it just Home Improvement?
No, he did his thing. He had a whole new regime and whole new change, and I was going off on my different adventures. I've got a couple of animation projects that we're pitching also right now, and this pandemic just sat on everything. I mean, it's one thing, how do you bring out a book during a pandemic?
Well, for me, I'm just working on books, and I'm doing. This is actually my summer break. I normally don't do episodes during the summer, but it's like I recorded extra ones because people are at home. It's like, and so
Well, I think it's a great time to create. I think you're wise. In fact, R.L. Stein wrote me an email the day my book came out, which was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks, and he said, only you would bring out a book during a worldwide pandemic.
Well, I knew about it a few months ago. I think I contacted you about 6 months ago, so you had no clue that this was going to happen,
No. I mean, we were talking bookstores and signings. And I was going down, to different conventions and out to San Diego, and it was a master plan. It was wonderful. But as it is now, it's Fantagraphics and Amazon. And although I will say it was doing well at Amazon, I'm not sure the numbers yet, but it has been well received. Those that bought it have given it a thumbs up. So luckily,
I got mine here, and I did get it on Amazon because all the comic book stores are closed. I didn't know where it was going to be. Barnes and Noble is closed, so I just said, I'll just order it online.
Oh, yeah, and you can't. Amazon is unreal.
Yeah.
They undercut everybody.
Right.
Even the publisher. It's just, they don't care about money on the books. You just have to pay that prime.
Right.
Yeah.
So, usually at this point on the show, I ask, where are you going to be? But you've already answered that in your house. And I know San Diego is canceled and everything else. So, but if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that? Or do you have a website or anything that people can?
Yeah, they can contact me at BK Taylor, like Burger King Taylor Studio. At Comcast.net, that's the email.
Yeah.
I have a website that hopefully will be redone and finished by then, and that is bktaylorstudio.com.
Are there any other books out besides I Think He's Crazy that you're working on, or is this the...
Actually, I have so many plans. It's getting them done. I have a graphic novel in mind, kind of a adventure with a group that is forced into having to go into strange lands after someone. And I really like the thought of this. It's kind of medieval type atmosphere, and there's some good characters in it. I think it could be fun.
Yeah.
Very very much like Timberland and the rest, but with that atmosphere, it'd be kind of a nice change. So there's that. There's I've got several animation projects that were on the table to be pitched, but you can't see anyone.
Yeah.
And there was some interest in the one, but the company that was interested is wobbly right now, even though it's a big company. Yeah, it's a tough time to do that, but there's so much I want to do. It does allow me to, the world seems to have kind of stopped. Good time to create, you know. So, onward we go.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you keep doing it all these years, It's like, it's an amazing career, I think, It's like...
Well, it's a bizarre, I can't hold a job. I guess that's what it gets to. Anyway, no, I really thank you. You can spend the rest of the night editing this down to
No, this is great. Okay.
Anybody listening to this is going to go, oh my God, when's this end?
Oh, they're already asleep. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that. So, okay, well, thanks for promoting the book. I really appreciate it.
All right.
And thanks for keeping me in mind.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, BK Taylor, for being my special guest. Episode number 81 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Headed home to a cardboard hut with duct tape doors. At the price I'm paying, be glad it isn't yours. Now get up, Crab Mountain, get up. 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 Don't fall back. Don't fall back. Don't fall back.